My daughter took my card for my grandson's medical procedure. 3 days later, her mother-in-law posted a photo from Hawaii cocktail in hand toes in the sand. Camille smiled and said, "Don't worry, Mom. It was only 100K. I said, "That's funny. My card has 100. Did you even check the name odds?" The words still echo in my head, her voice airy smug, so sure I would nod along and let it pass. As if a $100,000 was a minor detour on the way to something more important like a tan. I didn't yell. I didn't even blink. I just looked at her. And for a moment, I think she saw it. The shift, the calculation. She thought she was clever. She thought she was playing me. But the truth is, I've been watching her longer than she's been lying to me. And this time, I didn't give her the chance to burn me twice. I've been called many things cold, too. Careful, the kind of woman who reads every line in a receipt and still asks questions. But no one has ever called me stupid. This wasn't just money. This was betrayal wrapped in silk and sunscreen. She used Jonah, my grandson, the child I'd do anything for, as her excuse. And then she handed my trust to a woman who once told me I should try smiling more if I wanted to keep my daughter close. No, not this time. She crossed a line she didn't even see, and I'd been ready for it. I raised Camille alone after her father died. I was 32, newly widowed with a 3-year-old who didn't understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. I worked full-time as an accountant in Asheville, taking extra hours during tax season and cutting coupons in between. We never had much, but I made sure she never felt that. She had new shoes, every school year birthday cakes shaped like castles, and the only Barbie dream house on the block bought on layaway across 7 long months. Camille was always magnetic, bright, charming, with a smile that could soften granite. She grew up hearing how pretty she was, how sweet, how gifted, how I let those words fill her ears, because they drowned out the ones I was too tired to say. I never wanted her to feel the sharp corners of our life, the trade-offs I calculated each time I swiped my debit card. I thought love meant shielding her from reality. She showed promise once enrolled in nursing school, talked about pediatrics, even shadowed a local doctor. But she dropped out halfway through her 3rd year because it didn't feel right anymore. After that, it was a string of part-time jobs, floral shops, receptionist desks, retail. Nothing stuck. She met Wyatt at a music festival, married him 6 months later, and was divorced by the time Jonah turned 2. The only good thing that came from that union was Jonah himself, a soft-spoken boy with curious eyes and an old soul. I don't think he got from either parent. After the divorce, Camille moved back to Asheville. Not with me, though. I offered, but she insisted on her independence. Independence in her case meant I paid first and asked questions later. I've covered groceries, Jonah's preschool tuition, utilities, even car repairs. Camille forgot to mention until the check engine light had been blinking for weeks. I'd draw lines in the sand only to erase them the moment Jonah got a cold or Camille showed up crying. I never minded helping for Jonah. That boy is my heart. He brings me handmade cards with crooked hearts and writes Grandmore on everyone. He asks me questions about stars, about trains, about whether birds get tired from flying. And when he's asleep on my lap, the weight of him still small, I forget how bitter I've become about everything else. But Camille, she knows that she leans on it. She leans hard, and every time I think maybe she's changing, something happens to prove otherwise. Still, I kept helping. I kept forgiving because Jonah needed stability, and I wanted to believe Camille would grow into the mother he deserved. Then came Maureen, Camille's former mother-in-law, and my favorite passive-aggressive thorn. Maureen has always been about appearances. Makeup, flawless, nails, polished vocabulary, full of veiled insults, wrapped in polite smiles. The kind of woman who says, "You're so brave to wear flats at your age," and thinks it's a compliment. After Wyatt left, Maureen clung to Camille and Jonah as if keeping them close preserved something of her son. She bought Camille luxury strollers, designer diaper bags, and treated her to weekend spa getaways while I packed Jonah's lunches and paid for speech therapy. She once told Camille she should dye her hair so she wouldn't end up like her mother. I swallowed it all because keeping the peace meant keeping Jonah close. because I thought it was better to be the quiet, dependable one than to start a war Camille would make Jonah fight. I see now how wrong that was. And by the time Camille came asking for help again, I knew I'd finally run out of excuses. It started with a cough. Dry at first, nothing alarming. Then came the wheezing, the shallow breaths, the sudden quiet panic in Jonah's eyes when he couldn't catch his breath. Camille brought him to urgent care twice in 1 week before finally calling me. "He's not getting better," she said, her voice brittle. "They think it's reactive airway disease, maybe something more." I drove straight to her apartment, and the moment I saw Jonah curled up on the couch with a damp towel on his forehead, I knew it wasn't something we could wait out. His breathing was labored. His color was off. I offered to drive them to the ER, but Camille said she already had an appointment with a pediatric pulmonologist, Dr. Amari, at a specialty clinic in Raleigh. "They say he's the best." She whispered, eyes glistening, "But he doesn't take our insurance. It's all out of pocket." I looked at her for a long moment. She was sitting at the edge of the love seat, her fingers twisting the hem of her hoodie. I could see it coming before she said a word. "I don't have the money, Mom. I'm scared. Please. Just until the medical loan comes through." There it was again. That same soft desperation, that same unspoken script we'd performed a dozen times. She needed, I gave. She promised, I waited. I went home that night and stared at my gold card. I'd kept it mostly untouched for years, only for emergencies, only for Jonah. If this wasn't that, what was? The next morning, I drove back and handed it to her. Her hands trembled when she took it. "This is for Jonah only," I said. "Medical expenses only. I want receipts, and you need to call me before any use. I keep the limit low security reasons. You won't be able to charge much without me transferring funds." She nodded quickly, eyes glassy, mouth murmuring gratitude, but she wouldn't meet my gaze. Not directly. I told myself it was emotion, exhaustion, stress. I told myself that because I needed to believe it. Because I needed to believe that this time she meant it. Because Jonah was sick, and he needed help now. At first, Camille texted me daily brief notes that sounded pulled from brochures. "Initial consult went well," she wrote. "Waiting on test results. Dr. Amari is optimistic. No details, no scans, no bills." When I asked if Jonah needed anything, she said he was resting and we've got it covered. I waited. I watched, and I tried not to dig, but a week passed and the house was too quiet. I missed Jonah's questions, his laugh, the way he curled into me like a second heartbeat. I stopped by once unannounced, but no one answered. I stood there with a grocery bag of snacks and a knot in my chest that wouldn't loosen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I reached for my phone, scrolled aimlessly until a photo made my hand freeze. Morin on a balcony somewhere tropical. She was holding a pink drink with a paper umbrella and wearing a white silk robe, the kind that hotel spas give their exclusive guests. The caption read, "Morning calm, ocean breeze, family blessings. Grateful to family, Maui moments." I clicked her profile. My heart pounded harder with every image. A poolside massage, a dinner plate with gold flakes, Morin at a Gucci store, lips pursed, holding a handbag as if she were born into it. Then one post stopped me cold. Couldn't have done it without sweet Camille. Family first girls getaway. I called Camille. Straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. I went to see Jonah the next day. When I asked how he was feeling, he shrugged and said, "I'm okay now." Grandma Morin said she needed a break. She flew on a big plane. My stomach turned not from the lie, but from how easily she let it sit in his mouth. I called the clinic myself, asked to confirm Jonah's appointment with Dr. Amari. The receptionist hesitated, checked the system twice, then told me there was no record, no consults scheduled, no patient file under his name. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the floor until the lines between tile blurred. Then I called my bank. The woman on the other end was polite, cheerful, unaware that her words were pulling apart everything I wanted to believe. Yes, the card had been used. Yes, the charges were still pending. High-end hotel and Maui designer boutiques, spa services, 3 airline tickets, all within the past 5 days. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to. I sat at my kitchen table and pulled out a legal pad. I wrote down every date, every text Camille had sent, every lie she dressed in the voice of a concerned mother. I took screenshots of Moren's posts before they could disappear. I matched timestamps, cross-checked photo metadata with airline arrival times. I recorded a voicemail from Camille, her voice bright chirping about Jonah's progress while Moren was posting about beach yoga. I didn't tell anyone, not yet. The hurt hadn't fully settled and neither had the anger. I'd been betrayed before, but never like this. Not with Jonah caught in the middle. Not with this level of cruelty disguised as gratitude. I didn't rush to confront her. I waited. I watched the card activity. I let the silence grow. And when the charges reached just under the limit, I knew it was time. I didn't knock. I walked through the front door like I belonged there because I did. Camille's car was in the driveway, and so was Moren's, still bearing the airport sticker on the rear window. The air outside smelled like grilled shellfish and expensive candles. The dining room looked like a magazine spread. Linen napkins, lobster tails gleaming with butter, crystal glasses, half full of champagne. Moren wore a silk blouse and too much perfume. Camille was laughing when I entered the sound-sharp artificial. Her smile faltered the second she saw me. "Well," she said, smoothing her dress, "this is a surprise." I set my purse on the nearest chair and sat down without asking. "Didn't want to interrupt," I said evenly. "Just thought I'd stop by and see how Jonah's follow-up went." Camille blinked. "His what follow-up with Dr. for Amari?" After the initial consult, I figured he'd have seen Jonah again by now. Moren jumped in too fast. "He's doing so much better. Thank God. This trip really helped me decompress." I turned to Camille. She lifted her wine glass, hesitated. "Mom, we only used about a $100,000. There's plenty left for Jonah if he needs anything." I took out my phone, tapped the screen, and laid it face up on the table. "The card has a $100 limit," I said. "I never moved funds over. Every charge is pending. I flagged them all 2 days ago." Silence. The air in the room thickened. Moren's face drained of color. Camille froze wine halfway to her lips. "You set me up," she said. I leaned back in my chair. "No, I protected Jonah. You stole from him. From me, I just didn't let you get away with it." Camille's voice cracked. "You think I'd hurt him? You already did," I said. "You used him, and you lied." Moren pushed back from the table, knocking her chair into the sideboard. "This is ridiculous. You gave her the card. I gave her trust," I said quietly. "You spend it." Camille stared down at her plate. Her hands were trembling. I stood slowly. "I'll be calling the card company in the morning. If the merchants decide to press charges, that's between them and you." Camille looked up then, eyes wide, with something between shock and dread. Moren said nothing. She picked up her glass and drained it in one motion. I walked out without another word, my heels clicking softly across Marine's imported tile. I didn't look back. By the time I reached my car, the tears had already started to sting, but I kept driving. I wasn't sure yet whether they'd face the truth or just dig in deeper. 2 days later, I received a call from the Grand Laha Resort in Maui. The voice on the line was firm, but polite, asking to confirm that the charges made under my card number were indeed unauthorized. I answered clearly, yes, they were. I hadn't authorized any travel, any spa treatments, any luxury suites, and no, I would not be covering the pending balance. That afternoon, Moren was asked to leave. According to a guest services manager I later spoke with, she didn't go quietly. Security escorted her out after her backup card failed, and she demanded to speak to a higher authority. The photos disappeared from her social media that evening. The hashtags vanished. The glow faded fast. Camille showed up on my porch the next morning. Eyes, red hair unwashed her voice from pleading before she even said a word. "Mom, just this once, cover it, please. I'll figure the rest out." I swear I stood in the doorway with Jonah inside, watching cartoons. He'd stayed with me since the confrontation, quiet, distant, but safe. I didn't want him anywhere near that chaos while it unraveled. "No," I said. "Not this time. I warned you. I gave you conditions. You broke everyone." She blinked at me, stunned that I didn't fold. "But it's going to ruin me. You made that choice," I said. "I won't help you clean it up." Not when the mess was made over Jonah's name. The charges moved fast. The hotel and 2 luxury stores submitted fraud claims. The card company froze the account. I provided everything: screenshots, voicemails, timelines. Camille stopped calling me after that, at least for a while, but I kept Jonah. Not out of spite, not to punish her. He needed stability, and I needed time to figure out what came next. Each night as he fell asleep curled against my side, I remembered what this fight had always been about. Not money, not pride. It was about who was still willing to protect him when everyone else started protecting themselves. In the weeks that followed, I started seeing things differently. Not just Camille, but myself. I thought I'd raised her with strength. What I'd really done was raise her with guilt. I gave her everything I never had growing up because I thought that would make up for the things I couldn't control. Her father dying too soon. The long nights she waited for me to get home from work. The loneliness I never found words to soothe. When she threw tantrums as a child, I calmed her with gifts. When she lied in high school, I called it stress. When she quit nursing school, I blamed myself for pushing too hard. I smoothed over every rough edge thinking I was protecting her when all I was doing was sanding away her sense of consequence. Love without boundaries. I've learned isn't love at all. It's surrender. It's letting someone else rewrite the terms of your worth until you no longer recognize what's fair. After the confrontation, I made an appointment with a therapist. Her office was quiet, the kind of space where silence doesn't feel like judgment. The first session, I told her everything. How I'd made excuses for Camille, how I'd confused enabling with love, how tired I was of being the only adult in the room. She listened, then asked a question I hadn't prepared for. What would happen if you stopped rescuing her? I didn't answer right away. The truth settled over me slowly, but heavily. I knew then that the question wasn't about Camille. It was about whether I was finally ready to rescue myself. The credit card company launched its investigation. I gave them everything: record screenshots, voice messages, the paper trail Camille hadn't thought to cover. They told me merchants had the right to pursue legal action, and based on the amount they probably would. Nearly $100,000 across 3 states and 5 vendors, no signed authorization, no receipts. Camille stopped calling, stopped texting. Whatever shame or anger she felt, she kept it to herself. Morin vanished entirely. No apology, no explanation, just gone, as if erasing herself from the narrative could wash away what she helped cause. I didn't chase either of them. Jonah stayed with me through it all. At first he was quiet, withdrawn. He asked when his mom would come pick him up, then stopped asking altogether. I kept the routine simple: breakfast. At the same time, bedtime stories, weekend walks at the park. He began to smile more. His laugh returned light and sharp like it used to be. Some nights he still woke up crying, but I'd hold him until the trembling stopped. Slowly, he settled. In therapy, I learned how to let the silence breathe. I stopped trying to solve everything. I stopped rehearsing what I'd say if Camille came back through the door with excuses. I didn't need to rehearse. She knew what she did, and I knew what I wouldn't allow again. The letters from the credit card company turned from updates into warnings. If Camille didn't resolve the balance, legal action was inevitable. I didn't intervene. I wouldn't. Some things can't be fixed by stepping in. They can only be measured by whether trust, once broken, has the strength or the willingness to rebuild. When the hospital finally called to confirm Jonah's treatment plan, I asked for the invoice to be sent directly to me. No middle step, no crossed wires. I paid the deposit the next morning from my savings quietly, without announcement, without expectation. Camille showed up 3 days later, not at the door, but at the edge of the sidewalk. Like she wasn't sure she was allowed any closer. She didn't apologize, not at first. She just asked about Jonah. I told her he was healing, that he smiled more, that he hadn't mentioned Hawaii once. Then I laid it out. If she wanted any part in his life moving forward, she would need to show proof of steady employment, not promises, pay stubs. She would attend financial counseling, real, certified, and consistent. She would have no access to my accounts. She would not be left alone to make medical or financial decisions for Jonah, not until trust was earned again. She bristled, called me controlling, cold, told me I was punishing her. I didn't argue. I'd spent enough years explaining my boundaries to people who only heard what they wanted. Eventually, her voice dropped. She asked if I would at least tell her when Jonah's next appointment was. I said yes. She nodded slow, tired. It wasn't acceptance, not yet. But it was the first time she didn't walk away when the answer wasn't easy, and for now that was enough to keep the door open. When the hospital finally called to confirm Jonah's treatment plan, I asked for the invoice to be sent directly to me. No middle step, no crossed wires. I paid the deposit the next morning from my savings quietly, without announcement, without expectation. Camille showed up 3 days later, not at the door, but at the edge of the sidewalk, like she wasn't sure she was allowed any closer. She didn't apologize, not at first. She just asked about Jonah. I told her he was healing, that he smiled more, that he hadn't mentioned Hawaii once then. I laid it out. If she wanted any part in his life moving forward, she would need to show proof of steady employment, not promises, pay stubs. She would attend financial counseling, real, certified, and consistent. She would have no access to my accounts. She would not be left alone to make medical or financial decisions for Jonah. Not until trust was earned again. She bristled, called me controlling, cold, told me I was punishing her. I didn't argue. I'd spent enough years explaining my boundaries to people who only heard what they wanted. Eventually, her voice dropped. She asked if I would at least tell her when Jonah's next appointment was. I said yes. She nodded slow, tired. It wasn't acceptance, not yet. But it was the first time she didn't walk away when the answer wasn't easy. And for now, that was enough to keep the door.